today we have a quite nice topic, to be honest. I think the title is a little bit not such a typical title. Normally we talk about Zigbee and so on, but this time we are really talking about the power of layers, and I hopefully Alex can help us a little bit to explain what we mean here with Rheinland and what we currently observe. So Alex, maybe you introduce yourself a little bit, and then I might have some questions to you, and maybe Henk as well.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. My name is Andreas. I'm a managing partner at New Mobility Consulting. So what we do is we provide innovation consulting services to corporations, startups, and investors. So what we do is really we focus on some of the key trends that we see in the future of mobility: human-centric, connected, autonomous, shared, and electric mobility.
And this is quite interesting. Does anyone have a clue about why we are talking about the power of layers here? And you're talking about the mobility story and the future mobility story, and this is quite interesting story for us as well. But because me being personally more than 20 years involved in the telecommunication industry, I was very much aware that whenever we had a new wireless technology or we had a new layer coming to our communication systems, it's changing the world completely. Now, you made some experience in the future mobility story that changed your mindset a little bit, how future mobility might be enabled in future. So maybe you can tell a little bit about this.
Yeah, so when I think about the future of mobility, it's really all about an Internet of everything, right? So really see this convergence of not only multimodal mobility, but we also see the convergence of mobility with the energy and the telecommunications infrastructure, right? Because connected mobility means, of course, we need to move a lot of data around, we need to establish trusted connectivity, we need to establish trust in data, but also, of course, we need to make sure that when we think about electric mobility, that we can manage this intelligently from a smart grid point of view, right? Because when you think about a future where we have a large number of electric vehicles, those vehicles, of course, will introduce a challenge to the grid when everybody gets home after work and plugs their vehicles in to charge them.
So what do you think was the missing puzzle piece in the last 20 years to make this happen, despite the fact we needed a proper wireless communication technology? But what was the missing puzzle piece?
I mean, when you think about the way we think about applications, right? We always move from centralization to decentralization, right? When you think about the mainframe and then we go to client server, right now we think about the cloud, yeah? So the question is, how do we really think about a future of mobility that is affordable, accessible, and sustainable, yeah? And what I believe is we have to avoid a future where individual players monopolize mobility, right? So I believe strongly in this platform economy, in a future where we figure out a way to use technology to create a symbiotic infrastructure where all of these different constituents in the future of mobility can have an equal footing and enable new business models, right? So you think about a smart city, you think about multimodal transportation, you think about energy providers, and also the prosumer in the world of energy, yeah? Okay. All the way to the telecommunications infrastructure that creates the infrastructure to move that data around.
So, tell me, what is the missing puzzle piece?
I think the missing puzzle piece is really the infrastructure to establish trust in this emerging ecosystem without any central intermediaries.
Okay.
And there I see blockchains, or more generally speaking, distributed ledger technologies as a key enabler in this future.
That's quite an interesting point, because blockchain is quite buzzing around since some years, and we have seen some proof of concepts running around. So what would you say, what is one of the most interesting projects so far?
Yeah, like when you think about, maybe before we go into individual projects, maybe let's talk about more about what blockchain does, right? So when you think about it, today we all give up our data, we give up our identity on the internet, right? We all know this cartoon of this dog that is sitting at this PC, and where one dog says to the other, on the internet you can be anybody you want, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because there's not really any identity. And I was involved, actually I started at SAP, the work around the Internet of Things back in the year 2000 with the MIT Auto ID Center, where actually the term Internet of Things was invented by Kevin Ashton. Yeah? When you look at the Internet of Things today, we are still at a pretty early stage, right? Because today we really don't have an Internet of Things, but an island of things. Because we have no way today to really create trusted connectivity between those things. Those things don't really have an identity. And as we move data around, we cannot really establish trust in that data, let alone create real new business models where we can monetize data, where we can enable machines to transact amongst each other, right?
That means at the end of the day, we are missing some layer.
Yes.
In these communication systems that are providing the trust that you are talking about, enabling transactions and smart contracting.
Yeah.
So, and then if you look at the current systems, is you say what you in principle say the internet as of today is the internet of information where we send copies around.
Exactly.
But we are moving to an internet of value.
Yeah. And this internet of value is critical, right? Because we want to be able to share assets and also enable financial transactions, right? And the cool thing, you know, we were talking about layers, right? When you think about the OSI layers, yeah? Or when you think about ERP systems, cloud infrastructure, we always thought in these layers, right? These are kind of disconnected layers. But in the future now with distributed ledger technologies, the cool thing is that we really have one protocol now through which we establish this trusted identity, through which we can also do peer-to-peer asset transfer without any central intermediaries, and where we can also now enable financial transactions without any central intermediaries. Yeah?
So that means at the end we are talking about cyber-physical systems, and transactions should be possible, but there is not one blockchain, there are so many. And not even listing all the public blockchains out there with the different use cases, but we have also quite a lot of number of proprietary blockchains popping up, coming up from companies to serve their customer needs and so on. What do you, if I would ask you, would you prefer to go with a public blockchain in all cases, or would you say in some cases also a proprietary solution makes sense?
Yeah. So I think what we see today is, of course, many companies are kind of uneasy to rely on an open infrastructure. Yeah? And I think we saw the same thing in the early days of the internet, right? So initially it was all about intranets, right? And we all know today that the real value came with the open internet. Unfortunately now, of course, the internet has become monopolized, right? Yeah. That some of the players have really...
Who is it, by the way?
...monopolized some of the key services and also, of course, monopolized the data that is really the valuable thing in the future economies, right? So I believe that there will be use cases for private permission blockchains. Think about something like in banking, right? You don't necessarily want to have visibility of all transactions as you do hedging across financial institutions, yeah? But I believe really that the true value, especially as we think about mobility, as we think about the Internet of Everything, really lies in open permissionless systems. And the magic, of course, of this technology is that I can now establish trust between these different things. Imagine like a charging station, right? You know, today the user experience is very painful. If you have an electric vehicle, you know, you have to prepay your account, you have to have different RFID cards to work across different charging operators. Yeah? Now imagine a future where both of these things have a wallet. Yeah? They have an identity as through that wallet. They can now establish trusted connectivity, like imagine especially in an inductive charging scenario, right? You stop at a traffic light and now your vehicle needs to establish trust with that charging station. And then you start to stream energy and exchange it for tokens, yeah, and then it goes to green, and you continue, right? That will be a transaction. It must be truly open in my mind, right?
So, but you need to give us some hint.
Yep.
What projects do you see actually might, even if it's just proof of concept as of today, you think are the most exciting ones, and what blockchains are they using, and why have they chosen to go with this blockchain, and what companies are behind this?
Yeah, I mean, one thing, of course, the most well-known implementation of a blockchain, of course, is Bitcoin, right? And then we had the second generation solutions like Ethereum, for example, which introduced smart contracts and really turned the blockchain into a true platform where you can build distributed applications on top of. Yeah. And then, of course, we also experienced the issues that these existing blockchain architectures have in terms of scalability. Everybody has heard about the high energy cost that mining introduces, yeah? And also the scalability issues of traditional blockchain architectures. So one project that I, of course, like a lot is, there's like a new approach now to creating a distributed ledger that doesn't have a block nor a chain, yeah? And it's based on a directed acyclic graph. And the first project that implemented this new architecture is IOTA. It's a German foundation.
From Berlin.
From Berlin, yes. And the IOTA Tangle is a different kind of a data structure that promises to provide the scalability, but also the lightweight footprint, and also the ability to deal with offline transactions that we need in the Internet of Things, right? Because you don't always have connectivity, and we also need the ability to actually operate on lightweight devices, because ultimately what you want is you want to secure the sensor data at the source, right? Okay. Because many blockchains have the issue that, okay, you write something in the blockchain, you make it immutable, but what happens from when the data gets generated by a sensor until it actually ends up in the blockchain, right? So IOTA is a different approach where if you want to post a transaction, you need to validate to other transactions.
Yeah.
So it's like in the energy world where you are a prosumer, yeah? So there's no miners, but you really democratize the process of creating this consensus mechanism. And the cool thing is, of course, we have no miners and therefore no transaction fees, which means now you can transfer data over this network in a secure way. But you can also now initiate payments without any transaction fees. Yeah?
Who's using it today?
There's a range of different companies that are working with IOTA. So companies that are in the public domain are companies like Bosch, like Deutsche Telekom, Volkswagen, and so on. Yeah.
So you attended the Telecom Labs hackathon at the weekend, and you were.
I was a judge. Yeah.
You were a judge, and who won?
Who won?
It's a blockchain hackathon, by the way.
Yeah,
right?
it was the project that won was basically creating a open, permissionless mobility ecosystem. Yeah.
Okay.
So the notion of this project, which I like very much, is we need to own and control our identity, and blockchain technologies allow us to do that, right? In the blockchain, you have one person that controls the blockchain, which is very different from the traditional architectures of centralized, clouds and centralized services. There's one person who controls the blockchain, and that is the private seed, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Every individual, every machine that has a wallet controls the blockchain, yeah? There's no central thing that does it, yeah? So this project, what they did is essentially to say, hey, we are creating a...
Let's go over to move to the table. Someone asked me, maybe we are getting some presents, I'm not sure. Some espresso maybe, I don't know. Switching on, yeah. Please continue.
So the notion of this, the notion of this winning project was that we can use a distributed ledger now to give an identity to individual consumers that want access to different modes of transportation. And now blockchains would help to create this peer-to-peer environment around this individual consumer to provide access to different modes of transportation in a seamless way without any central intermediaries.
So what you say is, while most of the people are talking about Internet of Things, you are more talking about Internet of Everything, and this includes us as well, the human being.
Yeah, if you think about it, in the future, today we are used to the paradigm of having a smartphone, yeah, and some of us have a smartwatch and so on, yeah. But ultimately, we are going to be authenticated using some biometric means, right? And then we will have a lot of different computing devices around us, yeah? Surfaces will be computers, right? Cars will be computers. We will access a shared robotic taxi that we don't own. But as we approach this taxi, we want to be authenticated using our biometrics. We want to make sure that that is secure, yeah? And as we get into that vehicle, we expect this to feel like it's ours, right? So it's fully personalized. But of course there will also be cameras, for example, that will monitor the passengers, right? Because in an autonomous vehicle, I need to make sure that you are alive, right? I want to maybe monitor your heart rate. I want to monitor your emotions and so on, yeah? So there's a lot of risk in my mind, yeah? That, you know, if you compare to the current world where our data gets sold left and right, yeah? We need to make sure that the consumer can own and control this data.
Control his own data.
Yeah, and therefore you need this identity, and you need to have decentralized data, and you have to be able to decide who do you want to share certain data with.
And monetize it.
And of course monetize it, because today these platform services monetize our data. We are the product, right? A lot of people don't have even the slightest idea of what happens with their data, right? If they knew, they would be really scared. And also when you think about the Internet of Things, yeah? You know, everything, like today your phone is one component of the Internet of Things, right? Soon we will augment ourselves, right? With sensors, right? To improve vision and so on and so forth, yeah? So it's really critical, if you want to harness the value of those technologies, that we give humans control and ownership of their data, and that we actually figure out a way to do responsible innovation. So, and I think blockchains is a really important way to do that, to give people ownership and control, to make sure that something like the Internet of Everything is actually secure, because, you know, the attack surface, of course, is significantly increased now when everything is connected, yeah? Our critical infrastructure is at risk. And so therefore we need to make sure that we can establish this trusted connectivity, but also in a world where data is the new oil, we need to make sure we can establish trust in data and create open ecosystems where we can sell this data and not create more data silos, right? Because today we have lots of data, but this data is typically not accessible to those entities that can actually turn the data into value. So therefore we need to change our mindset and create open, interconnected data lakes, yeah? Where I can trust data that you generate, I can trust, so I can consume it, use it, I can pay you for that data.
And we avoid the double spending problem.
Yeah, and that is exactly like the core of the blockchain technology, that I can establish this peer-to-peer trust and build consensus without any central intermediaries. And that's like really, if you think about it, it's a hugely powerful thing that most people have not really started to even grasp. Yeah?
I'm sometimes quite famous for being a little bit more controversial, because we always need to try to look from different angles on certain topics. So let's give us a try. I heard some rumors that people said trust can be only established between human beings. And I personally believe trust might be able, that we in future trust more certain algorithm and consensus mechanism or other kind of technologies even more than we trust any other human being. So what is your opinion here?
You know, I think code is law, and we will see more and more that we can automate a lot of decision making, assuming we have trusted data sources, yeah, and we can program the rules in a contract, yeah. That said, of course, I still see a role for intermediaries that verify certain data. Yeah? So, for example, when I talk about my vision of a self-sovereign identity through which I can access any mode of transportation without having to have an account with one of these providers, where my data is put at risk because I put it into a honeypot of data along with other accounts, right? I should control my data. I should make that data only accessible when I actually want to access a shared vehicle, for example, right? So the opportunity that I see is that we can now redistribute the ownership and control over this data and put the consumer back in control, which also actually is a great thing for brands, because it's also a brand risk if you get hacked, yeah? But let's say, take this example of the self-sovereign identity. The question, if I have a driver's license, yes, there will still be an authority that will issue my driver's license, yeah?
Exactly.
And this driver's license should be now associated with my self-sovereign identity, right? If my driver's license is being revoked, then I need to be able to make that transparent, yeah? But we want to do that in a way that doesn't infringe my privacy, yeah? So this is one thing that blockchain technologies can enable, yeah? That I can essentially prove certain things without the need to access all of your data. For example, I live in the States. If I go to a restaurant, you get carded, right? So they want to make sure that you're over 21, so you can drink your beer, yeah? Obviously, I look like I'm 21, so I get carded. But if I want to prove that I'm over 21, I shouldn't have to expose my ID. I shouldn't have to expose if I'm an organ donor, or I shouldn't have to expose my birthday. Yeah? All I should have to expose is, hey, this guy's over 21 years old, right? So we can enable these kind of proofs in a world of data scarcity using blockchain technologies.
What you're describing is a completely new world, and I feel a little bit. I can see, coming from the communication technology, information technology world, is what the power of such a new layer like the blockchain distributed ledger technology layer could be in future, would bring back in business-wise. But I think this time it's a little bit different. What you are describing, it's not just the business for a few. What you are describing is a little bit a democratizing of the internet, and everyone is able to monetize whatever he owns as an asset, whatever he owns as a data, so it's opening up a lot of more possibilities in future. So coming back to my question at the beginning, is that you're coming from future mobility. So do you believe that especially the mobility sector is one of the key drivers to enable this or make use out of this technology in the first instance, especially if it comes to IoT?
Yeah. And when you say this is a new world, Tim Berners-Lee, who is like the inventor of the web, yeah, he actually had, back in the days, he asked the question if we should have a way to monetize access to a web page, yeah, and content, yeah. So there was a notion of, hey, should we have the ability to do microtransactions, so that when I visit a website, that I would have to pay the author of that content and so on, yeah? I don't know exactly why the decision was made, but I'm quite sure the idea was, hey, if it costs something, that will limit adoption, right? So the idea was, hey, make it free so we can rapidly get adoption of the internet. Unfortunately, this has now led to a point where there's only very few companies that monetize the content that other people create, yeah? And when you now think about, for example, mobility, and as Germans, right, we understand that the backbone of our industry is automotive and everything that comes along with it, industrial machinery and so on. We need to really be highly motivated to ask, how can we turn these machines into the new miniature platforms that really have their own identity, that can do peer-to-peer asset transfer, yeah? So I can, for example, implement an Uber kind of a model without an Uber, right? Because I can establish trust between us as drivers. I can establish trust between different vehicles. So the robotic taxi and me, we can make a transaction, yeah? Without any central intermediary that sets policies or that takes advantage of the data asymmetry that we have today in the platform economy. So,
I think one of the key things that we all need to understand, whenever there is a new technology coming up, and even if it's a powerful layer maybe, yeah, it needs to be a solution to a problem. If it's not a solution to an existing problem, then for sure it will never be quite successful, that's for sure, right? So what kind of problems do you see that couldn't be solved with the blockchain technology?
Look, there's so many problems that are unsolved today that we would take a lot of time to really
we're
go
talking
through
about politics as well.
Yeah.
And
no, look, we have the issue that foreign actors are influencing elections, right? If you think about who is generating opinions and traffic on the web, yeah, how much of that are bots versus actual humans, yeah? So the issue is really this notion of trust. And take it very close to the heart of, a manufacturing business. Today, I don't want to say any name now, but let's just take an automotive OEM. If some foreign actor decided to hack a robot of an OEM, let's like a welding robot, yeah? And say, okay, usually it makes whatever, 80 welding points, yeah? But now I hack that thing and I only make it 50 welding points, which will lead to a safety issue for that vehicle, yeah? Or a future liability issue. Nobody would be able to detect that fact today, right? So we need to establish a way to establish trust in the identity of things, the things that generate this data. As we transmit that data, we need to make sure that we can trust this data, we make it immutable, because there is, for a fact, a lot of actors that try to impact our telecommunications infrastructure to modify data, right?
I mean, what you say in principle is that you're the strong believer that whenever we are talking about Internet of Things or everything, it can be only made useful in a proper way and safe and secure with a blockchain technology. Full stop, because this is building up the trust that we need for this machine economy in future, and maybe also, and any other approach that we see, proprietary solutions, small alliances trying to bridge the gap between different players in the ecosystem and so on, are obsolete.
Yeah, the thing is, obviously there's, when you think about protecting data, you can do encryption. And a lot of people say, well, I can do just encryption, why do I need a blockchain, yeah? The thing is, the thinking that comes from that is this proprietary siloed thinking, yeah? That thinking might be appropriate if I just want to do this island of things, not the
I have seen some
things.
new alliances with this silo thinking.
So if I only think about my ecosystem, my device, and sending it to my backend, but the future is, of course, ecosystems, right? We have all this data that is getting generated, and we need to make sure that we can harness the value from this data. We need to get to a point where we can really democratize the access to that data, because otherwise I can guarantee you it's not going to be the typical German or European industries that will win, but it's going to be platforms that will monetize. And
that means we are still in a battle. Well, that means we are in a battle. The end users of such technology who would like to monetize their data or make use of it more in a proper way, we are still getting, let's say, pushed in a corner by some companies try to monetize these services and a silo thinking, proprietary solutions. So whether you see the make or break line where a blockchain technology who might crack this and get into new opportunities for all of us, and also more ecosystem players in future, and when will it happen? When do you see it happen?
Look, we are still early days with blockchain technologies, yeah? It's like the early days of the web, right? But the key thing is now we need to ask ourselves, do we want to shape our future, or do we want somebody else?
So it's up to us to decide.
Exactly, and everybody who is not one of the key players today in the platform economy should be highly motivated to create a more level playing field, to create a more symbiotic infrastructure.
That means finally we might see in future companies coming up as a startup company, and you're working very close with a lot of startups in the US market. They might come up and they fully agree to the open collaboration platform and not closed silo solutions. And these might be the winners of the future.
And the thing is, these protocols, of course, they change the game, right? Today, if you think about where's the value created, yeah? Today you have TCP/IP, but now the real value is the applications, right? Search, e-commerce, and so on that gets created on top, yeah? Now, the future, I expect there will be more value created by the core protocol, right? Because you have, on the one hand, this trusted connectivity, you have the asset transfer layer, you have financial settlement capability, yeah? And now a broader ecosystem of applications that any company can then leverage will emerge. Yeah? But when you think about, let's say, we just talked about this notion of, hey, there's existing solutions to securing my own data and so on. the future is really this interconnected world of the Internet of Everything, right? Where now, in the future of mobility, for example, there will be maybe a point where we don't own cars anymore, right? Where we will as a shared robotic taxi, for example. Yeah? So more and more now the question becomes, what is actually the value that I create? How do I actually, you want to get from A to B. Now at your destination, how can I monetize that? How can I monetize the time that you spend in your car? How can I deliver services to you whilst you are in the car? So these are totally new ecosystems that emerge. Yeah.
So give me a date. I'm desperately waiting for it.
Yeah, a date. Well, look,
production-ready solutions.
I think there is a lot of investment going into blockchain technologies, and there are a lot of people that I know that basically work 24/7, 7 days a week, really on making this happen. Yeah, and I'm totally convinced that this is the future because it is a future where also we have a chance to shape a future that we want. And also I think we have a lot of criticism now of the platform economy, right? A lot of people feel like they are being left behind, yeah? We have more and more income inequality because of the way the platform economy works, yeah? So I think, especially for those companies and countries that create real physical assets, yeah? The notion of making those physical assets actual machines that create business models in collaboration and that are our slaves, where we are the masters of these machines that now act on our behalf. And your car may in the future then make money when it's not being utilized.
Alex, when? Give me a date.
When? Soon. Soon. No, a lot of this is really complex stuff, yeah. And it also takes a lot of change, yeah? Organization change. People in like the automotive industry have just barely gotten to grips with cloud computing, right? But imagine a future where we actually move things to the edge, yeah? Where we use the machines to communicate peer-to-peer, transmit data from one vehicle to the other, from the vehicle to the infrastructure, yeah? Because we need low latency applications for autonomous driving, we don't want to make the round trip to the cloud, right? But we really want to leverage not only the connectivity that we can establish, but also ultimately the computational resources that we have at the edge, yeah? To really do distributed artificial intelligence based on trusted data, right? Because this is, I think, a key aspect. Once you can secure data, once you establish trust in the data, this data is, of course, the foundation for machine learning and artificial intelligence, yeah? And once you have data at scale, and once you can tap into edge computing and infrastructure that you have available in terms of bandwidth, computational resources, storage, you can come up with a totally new paradigm where you actually move business models to the physical layer.
So, beloved audience, this was quite amazing. I think it's a little bit long. How long was it, Jan? Oh, that was great. I think we can continue for the next 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever. My opinion, Alex convinced me. Am I shocked? No. To be honest, I thought the last 20 years the buzzing around IoT was just the buzzing. And for sure we are looking from the wireless connectivity story on this, but for me it was quite clear the connectivity is one story. But to enable the IoT machine ecosystem, something was missing. And I'm also a strong believer such technologies, distributed ledger technologies, would be a solution to the problem. And maybe it's opening up opportunities that we can't see today. So my last question to Alex, quite interesting one. Alex, what do you think is important for TÜV Rheinland now? Where should we look into this story? Where should we start? Because we are not, I would say we are quite far away from this story. We are not looking so much into details if it comes to these machine economies. We are looking a little bit from the connectivity, we are looking on the cybersecurity, but the economy itself and how it's driven by such a powerful layer maybe in future, where should we start and look to? Should we become a member of any foundation and look to and talk to the people? What is your advice?
So I think very important, of course, is to get involved and to really explore this technology. And I think there are different technologies that you want to take a look at because it's still early days, yeah. So it's hard to pick a winner at this point. When it comes to the Internet of Things, obviously technologies like IOTA are, I think, very interesting because of the different architecture that's really built for this IoT and machine-to-machine economy. But there's certainly also other things that you might want to look at. And then in terms of what should the TÜV do, yeah? I mean, if you think about it, you're ultimately, you are certifying something today, right? You're putting your stamp of approval to establish trust.
We establish trust, yes.
Yeah, that something actually works, but it works in a test environment, right? That's what you certify. But now we have this connectivity, right? All these machines interact with each other, transfer data and so on, yeah?
Somehow it looks a little bit, for me, the process itself need to be certified as well.
Exactly, yeah. So now you can actually think about saying, hey, how can I make this certification and this trust part of every transaction, every data transfer that happens between one machine and the other, yeah? How can you actually monetize every data transfer that happens, right? Because you not only certify a new product that comes out, but every one of these billions of transactions that will happen in this machine-to-machine economy, in the Internet of Everything, you could have a tiny, tiny fraction of a cent or something. Yeah?
You're talking about revenue share. Okay, that's a different story. Forget about it.
Yeah? No,
we charge one time, maybe two times.
Why? Why would you not say every transaction that you establish trust in could be an opportunity?
I think personally, I'm thinking about this story quite long already, and I thought, what could be a business model for TÜV Rheinland with respect to this? Because there is something of building trust in the interconnectivity of the devices. But I think the most important point is you have a source of data. First of all, you need to prove that the data is correct. Yep. And then you need to write this data tamper-proof into the blockchain. If I believe the blockchain is immutable, I'm fine. But this exactly the point before is a very important point. And I think this is describing a process. This is describing certain standards, how you can write it, how you can cipher it, how you can encrypt it or decrypt, and so on, yeah, right? But this is maybe something we need to take care as TÜV Rheinland in the first instance. And then secondly, looking into the complete value chain of these IoT systems that are building up, cybersecurity for sure in total is a story still, but also performance. I'm thinking about all these blockchain technologies are very much differentiating between the different key performance indicators. So one is talking about 6 transactions per second, the second one is about 1,000, and so on and so on. But one is enabling smart contracting, one is enabling just microtransactions with less fees, and so on and so on. And I think at the end of the day, it's coming back to certain kind of performance. I think we have in our IoT scape quite often use cases where performance is key for success. So we don't have so many devices just sending one message per day. Especially if you look into the automotive industry, these cars might send, I don't know, how many data per day to a blockchain. That's crazy, right? So this is something we are looking for. And I think this is something we need to look into. And we need to support these ecosystem players to develop a proper technology that at the end of the day is serving the needs that we see.
And I think the mobility ecosystem, from car OEMs to tier 1 suppliers to smart cities to energy companies to telcos, they are all very interested in this topic. So I think there's a great role for you guys to play in making it work.
Thank you, Alex. It was great. Thanks, guys.